If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Roll!
Welcome to another episode of the Dihedral podcast. This is Gaia.
And Carrot.
And today we're sitting with two amazing people. You probably already know them from Climb on Maps, or The Common Climber, or perhaps WTF Tour. But if you're not 100% sure, we'll introduce them to you. Today we're with Stephanie Dunn and Rick Momsen. Welcome so much. Welcome so much. What is wrong with me? It's late.
Good evening.
Welcome, and thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome so much. Yeah. And thank you for the invitation. It's great to participate.
So let's start by asking, what got you into climbing and what was your first climbing adventure like?
Well, we both have two different stories. We weren't together before we started climbing. So I started climbing about 2007 after my divorce, my first marriage. So Rick is marriage number 2 for both of us. I'm his marriage number 2. But after the divorce, climbing was something that I've always been interested in, and along with just a lot of outdoor activities. But yeah, I decided to get into climbing. I happened to date a man. I don't know if I should mention exes, but I dated a man who was a guide, for a river guide and a climbing guide, and I basically learned the tools of the trade through him. So that's my short story.
Wow, that's really great. I mean, if you're getting into climbing, you might as well date a climbing guide. Way to go, Stef.
That's right, yeah.
Look at Rick's face. What do you mean, way to go?
Yeah, but she moved on. We're on to the good guy now.
Way to put me on the spot there. Well, as a kid, I always liked climbing stuff, side of the house, trees, etc. And then as I got older, well, I grew up in Kansas, so there wasn't a whole lot of rock around to climb. Let's see, when I eventually moved out to Oregon, I knew a couple people who climbed, but they turned out to be total jackasses. So I kind of put off my climbing career even further. But I got into mountaineering and had a lot of fun then. And it wasn't until I was overseas that I kind of discovered the climbing community. And that's what really sucked me in, is that every weekend going out and cruising across the country looking for new climbs and new areas, and
that was in Korea,
meeting new
right?
people. Yeah, this is in South Korea. Meeting new people, and so the whole social aspect of it is like meeting people and adventure, and like it completely sucked me in.
And I think you started climbing a year before me, right? Like 2006 or something.
Well, that was in 2005, and then had trouble finding partners, and then some people who I were climbing with. This is in Japan, and seeing, I don't know. A friend of mine took a giant whip doing something really stupid and came in and shattered his ankle on sea cliffs. So that was a nightmare. And well, I'll just leave it at that. That was a nightmare, and I decided I'm done with this for a while. And it wasn't until I moved back to Oregon in 2013 that I came upon a group and it started climbing again. And my just life force just came back to me. I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing. This is what I needed in my life. And
then we met each other.
And then surprisingly, like a couple months later, I met her.
In that climbing group, because I had decided I won't date a man that doesn't climb. So that is how focused on climbing I am.
I feel like you made the right choice. I mean, it really seems like you guys are a perfect fit with one another, which kind of leads to the next question I had. This sounds like maybe a silly question, but it's a serious question. Why are you guys so nice? I mean, you're legitimately just nice people on your interactions and your social media. You just draw people in with your personality. I mean, everybody loves climbing, but you can't not love people who love climbing and love each other and love other people. So I don't know if it was how you were raised, but I was wondering if you can tell us how you fell into being nice human beings.
I got tired of assholes. I'm just generally a nice person. Like I try to, I mean, almost to a fault, try to accommodate and make sure everyone else is happy. But I'm just, life is too short for negativity. Um, I've had my share of it, and I just don't. I don't want that anymore.
I'm actually teary eyed by that question. That was really really sweet. Thank you. I mean, for me, it's kind of a heavy answer. I guess I could say I had a really, really, really difficult childhood, and I don't know. There was just an internal choice to treat people well, because I know how badly things can get when you treat people like shit. So so yeah, that's important to me, because people's souls and spirit are valuable.
Yeah, I agree completely. Well, for whatever it's worth, it shows. I mean, you guys just bleed kindness through every post that you make. I should say almost every post that you make, because every once in a while we do notice that you guys do bump heads. And maybe we can talk about that later. Those might be my favorite videos. I don't know what that says about me, but they're entertaining.
It's like, all right, we know you're nice. Now fight.
Yeah, exactly. We know you're nice now. Go at it. But we wanted to kind of get into what Climb on Maps is and how Climb on Maps came to be. So if you can kind of just share with the listeners really those 2 points, what it is and how it came into existence, it'd be interesting to hear that.
Okay, well, I think most climbers who climb outdoors or have climbed outdoors for any period of time have probably experienced the frustration of going to location. In particular, let's say it's your weekend off and you've spent a bunch of money to fly or time to drive or whatever, and you go and then you can't find the freaking climb that you want to get on. You get lost, you waste your time trying to figure out how to get there, and then next thing you know, your weekend's ruined, or you can't get on the climb because 20 million people are in line before you because it took you 2 hours of figuring out how to get there when it should have taken you half an hour or something. But yeah, so that experience happened enough times to us over the years that it really kind of stuck with me. I and Rick has a background in mapping.
Yeah, GIS, Geographic Information System, maps and databases.
Yeah. So when we after I quit my job, I used to work in academia, which was very, very, very stressful. I won't go too much into that, but I decided a number of things happened. Got really sick, and I had a very stressful job, so I quit. And then I took about a year trying to be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then finally one day I looked to Rick.
I quit my job because reasons. The company was going to implode. They were asking me to do things that were absurd, and last time I checked, they actually did implode. But anyway, I quit. I was just kind of wondering what was next. Then I hear from the
That's
other
so
room.
amazing.
And I guess that was Stef.
Got it. It was the epiphany completely.
So Rick was game for giving it a go. So we made the decision to basically sell our house and get a van, and we lived in the van for a couple of years to do the mapping. So we walked over 1,800 miles to map 4 different climbing areas that we have currently. Because one of the features, we wanted a bunch of features in the map. They couldn't just be, your typical maps that you see that are scales from really far away. We knew that in order to find someplace, to find a wall in a complicated area, particularly like Red Rocks or Joshua Tree, it needed to have really, really magnified scale, and fine grain detail. And so I was like, well, as a climber, what are the things that I would want to know on a map? I want to know, well, damn, that approach sucked. That was an ass kicker.
How difficult it is.
Yeah, so we have trail difficulty.
Yeah, and we do, let's see, I kind of want to throw in yesterday's example. We approached Strawberry Hill and First Creek of Red Rock yesterday, and if you're just looking at Mountain Project and the guide, it's like, go this way, get up to the top, and then scramble up some slabs, and you're there. Well, we get up there and like that, those are not third-class slabs, no way. And one part is, but the way to get up to it is, it's clearly 5th class, and not to mention, there's, if you fall, you're dead. So exposure is something. I've heard Steph told me horror stories of her in Joshua Tree saying the descent is way more terrifying than the climb. So and it's because exposure, and a lot of guidebooks they don't even get into that. A lot of I just want to be more generic. The resources don't get into that, like how to get off. They might say walk off right or wrap, but there's not that much detail.
So we have on the trails, we do points of exposure, and we give you an idea of what the potential if you were to fall at that point. So there's a caution symbol for something something minor, broken bones, major damage, and rest in peace. So you can look at the trail color. So we have a color-coded system when we're talking about the difficulty level, from easy, moderate, strenuous, ass kicker, and soul crushing. Those are our 5 levels. And if you see a strenuous ass kicking or soul crushing trail with death exposure, you can be like, hell no, I'm not going to do that climb. Forget it. That's just the approach, and we also, they try to map the walk-offs.
Or if you like that kind of thing.
That don't have the non-rappel walk-offs, so that, we don't have every descent or anything, but many of the walk-offs that don't require rappels, how to get down from the climb, because that's always an epic, right? That can happen.
I have a question. Now that you're explaining all the details and the intricacies of the process, what is the mapping process like? How does it work? More in detailed the technical aspect of it, because you said that you had to hike some miles in, and you were, I just don't know how it works. Can you please teach me?
Okay.
We went out there with high resolution GPS units that collect, they're technically GNSS, which GPS is the American satellite or positioning satellite system. And GNSS also grabs Japan's, Russia's, China's, all the other satellites to further refine that. And that is absolutely critical when you are in a steep canyon, because you need as many satellites as possible just to maintain a connection.
So they're super accurate compared to a GPS unit.
Yeah, down to, in a perfect setting, which happens often, down to 1.5 foot accuracy. So your phone is about, newer phones are getting better and better, and they're still probably 3, 4, 5 meters. Old phones, 10, 20, 30 meters accuracy. So these get really, really accurate. So what we do, we just turn them on and go. We'd collect it, Bluetooth into our phone. We'd collect the points. And then when something changed where all of a sudden it gets steep, or all of a sudden, the trail's gone and you're bushwhacking and stuff like that, we would stop that line and give it the information required. Like
So we have a
minimum
lot of note
difficulty.
taking. So we're taking notes
A lot.
about the trail difficulty, what the terrain is like, and all of that's really important for. We're also taking photos, so we can get the GPS location of the photos. So like turn right here, because we do have photos on our maps also for key points, but or photos for our own orientation. And so collecting all of that data, then when we get back to the house or to the van or whatever, all that data gets uploaded to the computer. And then basically then there's the next phase of the map creation, which is translating that data into a map. And that's where Rick's key skills are, utilizing what's called QGIS, but basically the software programs
to edit and clean up the data.
Yeah. So then
and my main skill is patience and persistence, because one of the things that I did was all the rocks in there I hand drew from multiple sources of satellite imagery, because there is no data that has that information. So that was, yeah, I'll just say wow. And there are some other features like the vegetation. I was able to do some analysis with other imagery and extract vegetation and that kind of stuff.
But some people have asked us, well, why don't you use satellite images for your backgrounds on your maps? And the reason is the satellite images do not get down to the scale that we're working at. I mean, our maps go down to.
I'm sorry, I gotta it's not about the scale.
Okay, but it's pixelated. You can't see. If you go down to the scale at which we're working, that imagery becomes blurry in most cases.
A little, yeah.
And then it also tends to be warped. I don't know how much detail. We can be nerds about it, but there's lots of errors in satellite imagery. So depending on the angle that the satellite is taken, you can have shadows that hide important things. You can have pillars or cliffs that look like they're leaning a certain direction. So there is no single source of satellite imagery that provides the level of detail and information that we have. So Rick basically utilizes multiple sources, plus our photos and our notes and memories, to hand create these maps to be as accurate as possible.
So. Another way to talk about the satellite is all satellite imagery is wrong somewhere. And if you look at you can even get on Google Maps and look at Smith Rock Monkey Face, the Tower of Monkey Face, and it shows the trail going behind it, which is physically impossible. Just because the way the imagery was taken, it's leaning really far and it looks all wonky. And that's just one example.
It's interesting to me. This sounds like people who used to navigate to make maps originally. We got to a point where we rely on technology to make maps and do scaling and things like that. But back when we were first starting to make maps, you had to be an artist, right? You had to be kind of more than just a person who travels, because people depend on this. And it's really interesting to hear what you guys are doing, because climbers or hikers or people out there, they depend on this. There's not a person listening to this show that hasn't gotten way off track following something like Mountain Project or even guidebooks. Like, we've spent hours looking for a bolt or something like that. And so it's really interesting hearing something that is literally ancient, like still being used independent, or I should say in unison with all the technology that we have available to us. I mean, you just can't replace, like you said, patience.
Yeah, and something that, again, even if we had really, really accurate satellite imagery, one of the things that you could never tell from a satellite image is, to get to this wall, you have to climb through a chimney. You'd never, ever be able to convey or show that or illustrate that. See that with a satellite. Like, if you were just looking and say, oh, okay, I'm going to make a map of some place and I'm going to look on the imagery and I'm just going to trace the trail and I'm going to figure out how to get to this wall based on what I'm seeing on this satellite. In some places it's very easy and that might work, but in complicated places like Red Rock or like Joshua Tree or the places where we've made maps, there's no way you could do that because you have to crawl under a boulder in order to get to one of these, or you have to go up or down a chimney, or there really is that fifth class section that you'd never be able to tell from the satellite, or like we experienced yesterday. We're looking at these pictures and the climbs that we were going to yesterday. Actually, we didn't map because they're newer climbs. They weren't in the guidebook when we were mapping at the time. So now there's some images and you look at sort of people just sort of drawing go this way on the image, and we're down there on the ground, saying, okay, how the hell do we get to this climb? And we ended up wasting our entire day. We never even got to the climbs. We basically, I think I did a first ascent, trying to find
it was a
these
656 corner.
And so we essentially did three pitches. We're roped up because there's this, some of the areas not, is fairly flat, but the exposure's death exposure. So we're roped up and we're basically treating it as though a climb to be as safe as possible. And then we get up to the point where we thought we'd be able to access where the climbs were, and we couldn't even access the climbs from where we were. And we're like, oh shit, what do we do? Well, we had to down climb, and I think I calculated about 450 feet that we went. So we had to down. So we climbed up 450 feet, and we had to down climb, down lead 450 feet. It was.
Oh, a lot of that was traverse, but we still had our heinous moments.
Yes.
That's insane.
Tried. Down leading is far, far more strenuous and complicated and stressful. I don't think I've ever down led that much before, ever.
So we still, even though we didn't actually, or technically didn't climb any routes, we still climbed like 900 feet that day.
Well, when Rick says, I think he did it for FA stuff, and he's like, what do you want to call the climb? And we still need to post this, but I think I'm going to call it, what did I say? Oh, this ain't the fucking way.
That's beautiful. I love it.
That leads me to, you're talking about this process, and it's such an intricate technical process, but then at the same time you have a rating system that says rest in peace, Soul Crusher, and now you came up with that this ain't the fucking way. So I'm guessing that Stef is the creative brain of the operation, but how do you come up with these names? Like they are fantastic.
I mean, ass kicking kind of speaks for itself. Soul crushing. I mean, we came up with that one afterwards. I mean, when we did Smith and some of City Rocks, and then got into or started working on Red Rock. And it wasn't until Red Rock where we went like deep, way back into the canyons, and everyone like, oh my god, okay, ass kicking does not even begin to describe what I just did, and had to come up with something else, and soul crushing was definitely there. But
I mean, when we did a lot of just conversations between us, is like, so how would we describe soul crushing to people? And Rick's like, I think it's when you just want to curl up in the fetal position and not move. I'm like, yeah, if I start crying on an approach, it's being labeled soul crushing.
That's perfect rating. I love it. So, Steph, I was wondering, on your bio on Climb On Maps, it mentions that you have more degrees than you know what to do with, and I might have this incorrect, but I think it said you had 2 masters and a PhD. I was wondering if you could tell us what those degrees are in, and then sort of explain not so much like why you lost a flair for academia, but how that transition from being at a school to moving into a van was. Was it easy to adapt to that? So basically, what did you study, and then how easy was it or hard was it to adapt to this new lifestyle?
Okay. So I have always had a love of both science and education. and as well as cultures, different cultures, and interest in different cultures. So I kind of I wove together all of those things, both through my degrees and through the various aspects of my career path. So my bachelor's degree is in cultural anthropology, and I focused on Native American education. But I also basically majored in biology. And so I did a lot of work around science education in Native American communities. And then my first master's degree was in language, reading, and culture from the College of Education. So continuing that research in science education with Native American communities. So honoring sort of the Native perspectives on the world and how those could have science can be taught with that. I also, my second master's degree was a Master of Science and is in soil, water, and environmental science. So that just continued my love of science, and I did research on what's called phytoremediation, using plants to remediate an old uranium mill site on the Navajo Nation. So you can just sort of see that blend there, and so I worked very closely with the numerous Native communities in the areas that I lived in, and did work after I got that degree. I did work in those communities around remediating the land from different types of mining operations. So I did that in both Arizona and New Mexico. And environmental health, which is teaching people about how things in our environment can impact public health, our own personal health. So for many years, I worked in that field. And again, a lot through education and teaching science teachers how to teach science in general, utilizing like environmental health to teach chemistry and biology, which are interesting to students generally. Then I moved into, and I got my PhD in education. So while working in academia, I moved into academia, an academic setting, and got into administration. A lot of environmental health is housed in colleges of pharmacy, so colleges of pharmacy have to get accredited. So my education background pulled me into that direction of working in accreditation. And I got into leadership positions, an assistant dean for the College of Pharmacy. And I also then moved into Oregon, and I took over overseeing assessment and accreditation for all of the undergraduate programs at Oregon State University. So yeah, kind of did the whole move my way up the ladder thing, which was very, very rewarding in some ways because I really believed in what I was doing. That, but the time demands and honestly, some of the other there's other aspects that are extremely stressful in academia. Near those times, I was dealing with some very serious health issues. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I also have an autoimmune disorder, and a number of things just caused my health to plummet. And all of that just took me into reflecting my life in a different way. I realized that at that point in time, the one thing that I really, really loved and needed in my life was rock climbing. And I needed to stop the toxicity that I was doing to myself. So after I met Rick was when I decided, we we got married, and I was in a position where I could quit my job and do the soul searching and also heal physically. So you talk about him being a nice person, and he was so, so loving and supportive and all of that. So to me, I was ready to live in a van. I mean, I just felt like been there, done that, buy the house, lose all the money in the freaking stock market crash and the whole, all of that. All of those material things that were, I was never really that materialistic, but I felt like the world was ripped out from underneath me. And I just needed to get to a place, and climbing was that place. And just living in a van was that place. I loved it. It was really stressful for Rick.
It was like, you have your project van. Most people, they like have it in their driveway and it's a project and they fix it and they say, yeah, I'm done. I'm going on a trip. No, that's not the way we did it. Like living in it and then like ripping out the interior and still living in it. And then like trying to piecemeal projects together while living in it. And
well, it was an old van. I don't know if you've seen pictures of it. We still have it, but it's like what year is it?
87 Chevy Astro.
Yeah, Chevy
so
Astro.
Cool.
Chevy Astro conversion. Company called Provan did Astro conversions. So it's a Tiger, Astro Tiger.
So it's converted to a camper. It was converted to 4-wheel drive before we bought it.
It's a pretty badass vehicle, but it's 35 years old, so it's only as badass as like 35-year-old technology.
Oh, that's a great point.
No work had been done on it. So like, let me tell you, everything you can think of that would break on it while we were trying to map did.
Okay.
Oh
There was
God.
the fuel line was 35 years old. Fuel lines are not meant to last that long. So we're sitting, work hard, hike all day, mapping all day, and we're really tired and we're sleeping. And we've been in there so often that we couldn't really smell it anymore.
Oh,
But
right.
we wake up just ripping headaches. I'm like, oh God, something's wrong. This is
Horrible.
Sniffing gas. But part of why we had to rip the entire van out was because somebody decided it was a good idea to run the gasoline line through the interior, behind the kitchen cabinets and everything.
Right past the furnace. The fact that we didn't blow up was like amazing. But let me tell you, the engine had to be replaced not once but twice. The transmission, you name it, everything. But it's completely overhauled now. But we ripped out the interior. It is now completely redone. But we had to rip out the interior because when we discovered the fuel line was going through the van, poisoning us with fumes and creating a sitting bomb, literally. We had to move the fuel line completely. Now you put the gasoline in right directly over the over the tank.
The tank, yeah, where it should be.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Did a lot of special custom work to it.
Anyway, that was poor Rick. He was so stressed out. It was definitely going through all those troubles while we were doing long days mapping, exhausted, nonstop problems with the van.
Luckily, we're out there mapping for 10-12-hour days every day. So you just get back, stuff our faces, and fall asleep.
I'm sure you slept well, despite the fumes.
I wasn't awake long enough to be too stressed out.
But now I'm curious, for how long did you live like that? How long were you living on the road?
It's a couple years, at least. Yeah.
So how excited were you, Rick, to be back under a roof, a house roof, not the van roof? Or you had van withdrawals?
Well, okay. So the funny thing is most, I don't even know if I'd say most. A lot of our van troubles or engine mechanical troubles happened in Vegas for some reason. And
oh God!
So when we're looking for work again, anyway, I took a job. We're here in Vegas, and that was the hardest thing for me. I was like, I don't want to. Okay, I can't do it in Vegas.
Literally, because honestly, so I mentioned we had to replace the engine twice in the van because the first engine ended up having a problem with it, so it was under warranty.
The first
replacement energy engine. So, but the first engine died literally in Vegas, and it was a fiasco story of the place that we took it to, and they put it in, and it was nothing but problems for the next year, and then. Almost exactly 1 year later, when we were back in Vegas,
on the way to Vegas in Arizona,
that engine blew. So, and then we had to get it towed to Vegas
because we were trying to get to Red Rock Rendezvous, where we had a booth that night.
Yeah. Anyway, we had to tow it to Vegas, get it fixed in Vegas again. So Rick's like, Stephanie, I will never, ever, ever drive through Las Vegas again. Ever.
The van.
Yeah. And I'm like, watch what you say, man. Never say never, because I promise it's going to come back at you. And then when he ended up, needing to get a job. He ended up getting a job in Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas was trying to tell you, no, you're not going to leave. We're going to keep you here one way or another.
Then I get this job offer where I work 4 10s, and I get a good vacation, working with the city of Henderson. So I'm like, well, wait, 3-day weekends?
You were like, all right, Vegas.
That's tough to pass up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now talking about that, going back to work and that transition from van life to just going back to the traditional structure, we know you work full-time, right, Rick?
Yeah.
So how do you balance between working full-time and then devoting a lot of energy to the project that you have as a couple with Climb on Maps, etc.? How do you do it? Rick, it's quite a lot.
Before you even start, Rick, I just want to say to the listeners, Rick literally just got off of work and now he's sitting here talking about climbing. So it's no joke that he works and then it's back to climbing.
It's all about climbing. Back up. Sorry, what was the question? How do
you were
I
and Climb on Maps and all that.
How do I do it all? I just kind of get dragged through it and swim through it. Let's see. So now my time with Climb on Maps is much more limited. And actually we're kind of in an intermediate or a transitional phase, trying to figure out, what's next for us. Mapping new areas, other, new map type options. So we're trying to, we're talking about that. So there isn't much actual going out and mapping new areas at this point. So that is a huge, which is also a problem. I'm working, so I literally can't do that. Any one of the areas that we mapped, if it was only happening on the weekend, would even the small ones would have taken a year. I mean, it would be a long time. So we're trying to figure out how to handle that. But I just kind of go, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Let me step in. I'm going to step in because I run the business full time.
She sees what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the one that's managing the business. So, and then, with respect to new areas, if we did any mapping, it would be me doing it solo probably at this point in time, which we've got some areas lined up where I'll probably do that. Doing solo mapping isn't something that we normally, would have done because, quite frankly, it's dangerous. Yeah. Having the two of us, we always had a walkie-talkie. We would sort of split up in a certain area to
maximize our
to
time.
maximize the time. Yeah. But we would be within walkie-talkie range to be able to tell.
Mostly.
Yeah. Sometimes we get out. And then one of my stories, one of the stories of one time where Rick, I was mapping by myself in Joshua Tree.
And I had to take the van to the shop. Surprise.
Yes. So we're like, okay, I'm going to just map this area. I'll go do it by myself. Well, when you're mapping an unfamiliar area, or section, you don't know what you're necessarily going to get into. And I actually ended up getting into some very, very serious soul-crushing terrain that was very dangerous, which Rick and I call Hell Boulderado fields. And basically it's these huge, huge boulders that have these 20 to 30 foot pits that if you were to fall into, it's these dark black pits that you'd never be able to escape or get out of. And even though we also carry satellite beacons for rescuing, I doubt even a satellite beacon would escape from those. And I ended up, because one of the guidebooks said, oh, you can get to this wall from this wall. And I could kind of see visually how to do it. And I was like, well, the guidebook says you can do it, so I'm going to map it rather than go all the way down this pretty tough gully and out and back up another tough gully. So here I am, I'm trying to cross, and I'm getting into this kitty litter boulders that are huge. So you're doing these mini bouldering moves with the pits starting to get bigger and bigger. And I got to a point where I was too scared to go back the way that I came. Yet I was looking forward, and it all looked really terrible. Well, I ended up showing up. So Rick got back, and it was dark by the time I got back. And Rick's naturally freaking out. He's like, because I was late. We had an arranged time and all of that, and I couldn't get into radio contact with him. And yeah, he was starting to freak out. And when I was in the middle of it all, I was in tears and just had to just lay on the boulder for about half an hour and not move, just to gain my wits in order to get through the rest of the boulders to get to the other side. So anyway.
So we don't like to do mapping alone.
Yeah.
It can be really bad.
I guess not.
But so we'll see. But we want to keep the business moving forward in some way.
Yeah. Side note, we actually mapped an area nearby Keyhole Canyon. It's a granite area just barely south of town. And it was a lot of fun getting out there together. And most of it is walking up a wash, but there was several trails that we had to map out. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was good to feel the cartography juices flowing again.
Yeah.
That's great.
We did that map for a friend who's making a guidebook. So.
Oh yeah. We're kind of just going to shift gears a little bit, if it's all right with you guys, and talk a little bit about the Common Climber and kind of what the mission of the Common Climber is. And Stef, I think you're more directly hands-on with the Common Climber. Is that true?
Yeah, that's my project.
That's 100% Stephanie.
It basically started as a mechanism for me to be able. I enjoy writing, and about one of the things I'm really interested in writing about is climbing. Big surprise. So it started off as a website for me and as an outlet for me to write. But I never really approached it as a blog because most of the writing that I was doing was more article-like. So I did that, and then started just meeting other people who are interested in writing, other climbers, and inviting them to contribute. And so I envisioned it as a way for maybe people who didn't want to mess with a blog, but still wanted to write occasionally as an outlet for them. Or if people did have a blog, it could be a way to just gain an extra audience for that if there was an article or entry they had that seemed to fit real well. So it kind of just cruised along that way for a long time. And then I was approached by an Australian climber named Dave Barnes, who is very, very enthusiastic and just an awesome dude. And he was like, Stephanie, you should, have you thought about doing this and this? And I was like, yeah, I've thought about it. I just don't know that I have, I've got a business already. I've got Climb on Maps. So I wasn't sure where I wanted to take Common Climber. But he kept kind of communicating with me, and I was like, okay, I will sort of try to push Common Climber to the next level, to like an official online magazine, if you are willing to work with me on it. And he's like, heck yeah. So he's assistant editor. It's an all volunteer online magazine. You know, at this point it's growing, but I just see it as a way of filling a gap that maybe is out there in terms of climbing magazines go. Because I think, you know, a lot of the climbing magazine outlets tend to focus on sort of your really difficult climbs and elite climbers, high level climbing. And that's awesome. It's fun to keep track of that stuff. But I think there's lots of room for the everyday climber who isn't climbing 514s to have a valued and valuable experience and be able to express those things. So.
And that when you mention just a regular common climber that doesn't climb 514s, this reminds me or brings me to the WTF tour that you had with the 5.7, because not everyone climbs 514s, and like lower grade climbs have been neglected. So it's like, oh, you're cute, you climbed a 5.8 or something like that. Whose idea was it to start the WTF tour?
That was my idea. It's another thing I drug Rick into. Coming out here, you know, and living in Las Vegas, we're like, you know, we have red rocks at our doorstep. There's so many climbs. So like, how are we going to decide what we want to climb?
It was actually almost stressful for a little bit. Like, oh, what are we going to do this weekend? Oh, I mean, there's so many to choose from. It's like every weekend we'd have to like start over. Like, it was exhausting.
My first idea was to start all the way like at Calico 1 and do every climb 510 and under and just sweep our way through, which would take the rest of our lives probably. Through Red Rock, and Rick's like, hell no. And then for Common Climber, a number of years back, I wrote an article about 5.7s, and I called it the WTF 5.7. And it was sort of a letter that I wrote to 5.7s, because I've, you know, in my experience, 5.7s are really, really unpredictable. You know, 5.7s that are established later, like 2000 and later, are fairly predictable. And sport 5.7s are pretty predictable. But, you know, trad 5.7s, particularly old school 5.7s, are like, you can get sideswiped really easily on them. And, you know, kind of similar to, you know, what can happen on an approach. You're like, God dang, are you kidding me? You know, it can happen on a 5.7. And if you have like the new trad leader, or even not a new trad leader, you're going, what the hell? I was expecting this to be fun, and it was really scary or challenging. So then I proposed to Rick. I was like, well, what if we climbed every single 5.7 in the park, and then like wrote about it and did a little mini online guidebook, so to speak, about the experience of climbing all of these 5.7s and giving people beta on the approach and the climb and the experience of the climb.
This WTF 5.7 tour to me is just completely unique and totally brilliant. And for those of our listeners who don't necessarily follow climbing, this is a really big deal. This has got a huge following. People just even like in our circle talk about it all the time. And I can't really say enough about how cool it is. I enjoy every time you guys post. And so if you guys aren't following this tour, whether you're a climber or not, you should really start to do it. But I wanted to ask you guys a question. Let's say, I mean, based on your experience, you've done, I think the last time I checked, it was over 100 5.7s already. Let's say somebody's coming out to Red Rocks. They haven't climbed there before. They don't have enough time to like jump on a bunch of stuff. If you could recommend one 5.7 that you're just like, this is it. This is where you need to go. What do you think? They could be different. Like if you guys don't agree.
Yeah, I saw Rick's face.
Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between sport and trad.
A lot of the sport sevens out here are single pitch,
Yeah,
so they're
there's
not. I don't know.
they're
Some are fun.
yeah. So going down the trad multi-pitch experience, I guess, because that's a common thing people want out of Red Rocks. It's hard to whittle it down to one. Can I say two climbs?
Please.
Go for it.
Okay. I really liked Mr. Z. Rick wasn't crazy about that one, but that one, I really loved that climb. I'd put that as number one. I'd have to say, and that one is sort of not in a lot of people's radar. The other one that I would say that is in a lot of people's radar, and I hesitant to say, but Birdland truly is an awesome climb.
Mm-hmm.
There are,
that's the one I was thinking.
oh,
of.
okay, yeah. Rick loved Birdland.
I'm pretty sure that there was something that we liked better, but it's not. You know, we've done over 100 5.7s are kind of blending together right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But we do have that spreadsheet, like so the WTF 5.7 tour is on the Climb on Maps website, so climbonmaps.com, and we have a spreadsheet that people can download, and they can see all of our ratings. So we have different F ratings. So there's the what the fuck, of course, and there's certain what the fucks that are like, would we ever do again? No, ever. We also have a couple of what the forget about it. So climbs that truly just aren't worth, don't bother with it. They don't maybe quite meet the what the fuck category.
Yeah, it's just not it's grimy, not worth it.
Yeah, there are a couple of what the fucks that are decent climbs, but they're 5.10s. They're not 5.7s. They are clearly like in the 5.10. Very challenging.
There's a surprising number of them we've done where it's a 5.7 with a 5.10 boulder move to start the route or something. Terrible. Like that.
Yeah.
And we think a lot of them have been, they just take the average grade. So there's moves anywhere between 10, like mid 10s to 5.5. So they just average it out and just call it a 7.
But we also label what the fun, and I think I'll probably, when we reach a certain point, maybe the halfway point, which is getting close, I'll organize the climbs in sort of a different way to help people, like the best of the bunch, or the super long approach.
How to get away from everyone.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's just so much fun, and I know that me and some of my friends, we talk sometimes like how do we move this? Like it shouldn't be limited to Red Rock. So maybe we can talk sometime about how to like use what you guys set up as a scale for 5.7s worldwide, because I'm sure people in Tennessee and people in Japan, well, maybe on a different rating system, like this needs to move forward. I'm passionate for you guys.
I would just recommend being creative with your F words.
Yeah.
Like fun, foliage.
What the foliage?
Talking about being creative with your F words, we're gonna put you to a test. So we start wrapping up a little bit. I see that Rick was yawning. Poor Rick must be so tired. Long day. No, you're fine. You're good. We're gonna do what we call a fun quiz. After the end of one podcast session, we do this with our guests. So in here, we know that you're very creative with your F words, so you're gonna plug the F. We're gonna present different scenarios, and you're gonna say, "Oh, that's what the foliage," or "what the fucking amazing," or something like that. You need to plug it in.
Okay.
So they're not necessarily climbing related, but you can plug in the F that you see fit.
Okay. Should I start? Okay.
Go ahead.
So you plug the F. Getting back home to a hot shower after a week long of primitive camping/climbing.
What the feel good?
Hey, yeah.
Oh, that was really good. What the feel good?
Oh.
All right. I got one for you guys. You plug the F. Trying to find a route in Red Rocks using Mountain Project only.
What the flail?
I'm trying to think of a word that would describe, like with Mountain Project, something about direction, because there were times when we were mapping and honestly they said go east and it was literally go west. So
It's so frustrating. What the frustrating?
frustrating. There we go. What the frustrating. You filled in the F word for us.
Such a happy accident. Let me try another one. This goes in both ways, Rick and or Steph. So one of you is out for a long day and you come home and Rick has just made you a beautiful dinner, or Rick, you're out all day and you come home and Steph has a beautiful dinner. You come home to a beautiful dinner. How do you rate that?
Well, okay, I'll tell you where my mind thinks, because Rick doesn't cook, okay? Yeah. So I'm like, if I came home to that, I'd be like, what the French kiss?
I was thinking, what the fabulous.
Ooh, all right, Rick, step it up.
Now you know what the move is. Okay, we have a night at the Bellagio. Bellagio, that's how you pronounce it.
Bellagio?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
Bellagio, yeah. Oh. Let's forget about it, because we actually
don't go there. We don't go to the strip.
No.
We just put random things. Yeah.
So the next one probably fits pretty well with that. Just in general, tourists.
Do what?
Tourists?
Oh, tourists.
Oh.
For those of you who can't see, which is all of you, it's just a blast watching Steph and Rick trying to come up with the right word.
Looking at the
It's like
ceiling.
the word.
It's real hard, people.
Smoke's coming out of our brain.
Well, when I hear the word tourist, I think, what, the fanny pack?
Oh, come on. That's the winner. Like, that's the winner right there.
That's the win right there.
Yeah, that's it for sure.
Now let's bring the scenario, but at the crack. So the last one would be tourist at the crack.
Oh, what the touring climbers? What the fun?
Okay. No, but I like that. Tourists are people, they're travelers, they're climbers. Travelers and climbers together are a real special breed that are a lot of fun to hang out with.
I'm sure we thought about the fanny pack tourists first.
Actually, we've been on plenty of climbs where they've watched and sort of are asking questions while you're in the middle of a climb, because the climb's really close to the. On the one hand,
cute.
it's actually it is kind of nice. It's hard if you're in the middle of a bad move or trying to place gear or something, but.
But actually, talking about climbers and fanny packs, they are kind of transitioning. They're merging, and you can now buy a $2,500 Gucci chalk bag. So they're kind of, it's coming together like that.
When Climb on Maps really takes off, I can see both of you just like chalking up with the Gucci, blowing off. So, I mean, there's so many questions that I still have for you. Don't feel obligated to answer this now. Maybe we can have you on again sometime. But usually before we close, we ask if you guys have anything that you want to plug from your own companies or businesses or sites or social media, to anything that you want to go.
I would just say a lot of people ask us, well, what do you get out of your maps as opposed to mountain project or guidebooks? And I would just say the main thing with that is that we give like really detailed, accurate directions, where mountain project, it's we all know the odds of getting to where you want to go using mountain project. And guidebooks, while they are an amazing resource for route information, they are, and this is admitted from several guidebook authors that we've met, that the mapping portion of it is, the bane of their existence. They hate that part. They like the details about the routes and everything.
And they have limited space. Yeah. So I just like for people to think about Climb on Maps as a complement to Mountain Project and the guidebooks. Both of those resources are really about the information about the individual climbs. And our maps, we say, get climbing faster, are to help you get there so you can actually be climbing, because that's the whole purpose of doing that. So,
Yeah.
The plugs, climbonmaps.com, commonclimber.com. Please check those out.
Yeah, they're
Thank you.
really popular on Instagram and well worth a follow too. You guys, thank you so much for joining us
you.
today. We'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Thank you.